Okay, anybody tuning in on the stream? Give it a couple of minutes and then we're going to kick it off. Today we have a fair amount of work to do. We're going to be looking at something called a high order component, which will actually be the third pattern that we are learning in React. Up to now we learned about the stateless function, we learned about container components, and the third one is the high order component. There's a fourth one called function as child. I'm not sure we're going to really get into that. It's not used as much, but there is some material in Leaflet if you're curious about it. And then the fifth pattern that we would get into, I definitely think we will get to that one. Basically, there are 5 patterns that are commonly used in React, which I like because it's not a whole lot of patterns. React itself is fairly straightforward in this regard. Do 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 do. Need my projector. Okay, guys, I think we got to get things started here. A lot of people late today. If you see them, bash on them because, like, we cannot afford to be starting late. I know it's an early morning and all, but we have a lot of ground to cover. So maybe I can first off just start with a couple of announcements. So today I will have to leave like on time at the end of class. I have a meeting to do, which is pretty exciting. This will be the third meeting that I'm having for setting up arrangements for teaching outside of Seneca. And this is going to be with a company called Blast Radius. Have you guys heard of them? So they're located down on Wellington Street near Bathurst there. And they're actually kind of sit in the middle of a cluster of companies that do this kind of work. A mix of like agencies as well as development companies. Blast themselves are part of like a small network of companies that join together. Maybe you heard of Taxi. Taxi's fairly well known on like the design side of things. They do a lot of interactive design. Blast is a little heavier on the back end stuff, the technical side of things. So Ben, my contact there, he was for many years like a big supporter of the fall tour that I used to do, and always came out to speak and meet students. So he's been like very, very helpful for students over the years. He's also a very accomplished developer himself. Recently, he was invited to NASA, if you can believe that, because he created an online application that allows you to relive the moon landing. It does it all in real time. He basically got all of the flight logs and stuff from the original flight and recreated this experience in real time. It also pulls in like audio clips and things like that, so you can actually hear NASA talking to the astronauts, and you can basically relive the moon landing, which is pretty awesome. So they brought him out, and they had him talk about building it and the importance of space exploration and things like this. And so, you know, I'm excited because like he's the kind of guy who can really help us with what we want to do here. If that meeting goes well, then I basically have 3 venues locked in, which will give me what I need to get this thing started. In the last class, some people were saying like, can I do it in the evenings? But I won't really be able to do that, simply because if I do it in the evenings, then everybody's gone home. And part of the goal is to not just teach how to do code, but to provide like a full support system where you get to meet people in the industry, where they get to pop in and look at what we're doing and keep me on my toes. I think I mentioned last week, I can't remember if it was you guys or the other class, but I was mentioning like one of the companies that I met with. I've been trying to set up meetings for a while, but they're very busy people. Sometimes it's slow. But Aaron, the technical director at the company, actually tuned into the live stream last week, and he liked what he saw in the stream. Oh, I know, it was Terrace. I was telling Terrace, not the rest of you guys. Yeah, he tuned in on the live stream, and he also went and looked at a couple of my articles on Medium, and he liked what he was seeing. So they invited me out. I met with him last week. They are very willing to work with me on this. They're going to open up their space pretty much as we need, which is incredible, because they're located like right on Queen Street, right in the heart of downtown, very accessible. It's a very nice space to work out of as well. So basically today should provide me what I need to guarantee that this is going to happen. I bring it up because I know you guys are very, very busy with all of your projects and so forth. But if you are interested, if you are truly interested in web development, and I think you should be, then this will be an option for you. It is going to be happening. So that's pretty much my big announcement for today. Today, as far as what we're learning, we're going to get into using something called a high order component. All right, so if I can sketch quickly for a second. We first learned about our stateless functions. By now, you guys know those pretty much inside out. These are our little, also called like dumb components, you know, because they pretty much just render something on the screen. But they do have some special things about them, namely that they can receive props. So you can customize what they're rendering on the screen by giving them props and then using those props. So we know all about that. We learned also about what we call the container component. Or you can also call it a stateful component. All right. And this is a component that essentially doesn't really render anything to the screen itself, but it can render all of our stateless components in here. So we've been using it for things like building a form, right? Where we have our styled components inside of here. And then this one is class-based. And that means that this guy has a state, and we can call setState to put things into its memory. It's also got a life cycle, so it has functions built in like the constructor. It's got a component will mount. It's got a render. That's an important one. And it's got 3 or 4 more as well that you would use less. These are the ones that you're pretty much going to use all the time. Constructor allows us to like set up any kind of variables or things like that it's going to need. Component will mount gets fired just before it renders to the screen, so it's a good time to talk to a database, for instance. And then render is, what's actually going to put on the screen. So the render is what is used to arrange this as a container here, because inside the render is where we're going to list out the stateless functions that we need. Now you can, we've done like 1 level deep here, but you can sort of picture, you can actually nest these components however many levels of depth that you need. You probably don't want to make them like super deep because it start getting complex. If you're getting like 2 or 3 levels deep, you can probably break it off into a separate component. But containers are, for this reason, are super, super useful. Okay, so today when we look at our high order component, here's how it works. It's like a high order component is like what I would call a factory function. It's just a function that says, oh, you want this component? Here, let me make it and give it to you. But when I give it to you, I'm going to add on a little bit more capability here. So you can use this for all kinds of things. You've probably been already thinking about our form and the fact that it doesn't have any validation, right? So there's nothing stopping me from submitting a blank form or putting something invalid in an email field or something like that. This is a perfect situation where we can use a high order component. So rather than creating our form directly, what we do is say, hey, high order component, this is the form that I want. And that high order component says, okay, I'll make it and I'll give you that form, but I'm going to add validation on it. And the reason we do this is because now we've got this validator that we can use for any form anywhere inside of our site. And it keeps the form itself simpler. If we're trying to build the validation right into the form, it's going to get complex. It's going to be hard to reuse. So it's better that we handle the validation separately and then just combine them. So that's the goal of a high order component. In the examples in Lab 8, there's a couple more that you could look at. There's one that uses a high order component for getting information from a database as well. So in that case, it's basically, hey, whatever component you ask for, I'm also going to give it this data, which can be really, really handy, right? Because now you don't have to do a lot of database calls. You just use your high order component. So I would say it's probably, of the like more advanced patterns, this is the one that's probably used the most. So we are definitely going to do that. Now, before we get to that, I want to take a quick look at the state of the example from last week's lab. And I want you guys to pick on it. Okay? We're going to look at it. We're going to say, why is this shitty? I want you to take my work and rip on it. All right? Sounds fun, right? Yeah. How many times does your prof tell you this? Never. So let's do it.
Lab 7?
We're in Lab 8 today. And you will be continuing from your lab 7. So do fork it, and you're going to be submitting that fork. We'll get a little bit further with it. Okay, let me get my projector going, and then we'll dive right into picking on Tim. Test, test, test. Yeah, I think our audio's pretty good shape. Switch that over, great. Let me just kill the front light there. Nope. All right. Okay, so this is kind of where we left things in the last lab here. So I want you guys to, I want you to get used to oh, that door locks.
That's it.
It's okay. Yeah, come on in. I want you guys to get used to that the goal here is like not to just repeat this code. And the goal isn't even just to make the code work. I don't want you guys to go out there and just be code monkeys, where someone says, here's exactly what I need. You go do code, right? Because that person is a very replaceable person, to be honest with you. If you find yourself in a role like that, you have to fight to get beyond it, to get closer to the actual business value. Because otherwise, they can take that and they can hand it to anybody, you know? And they will. They will find somebody working for like $2 an hour overseas to do it. So you have an opportunity when you're working on these projects to say like, okay, beyond just making the code work, is this good? What would you say? No, it's shit. It's shit. It's total shit. I have, like this says, this will be a menu bar. And it ain't, you know? Like when I see this, I'm like, okay, this is like 10% done, you know? Down here, some label here. Enter description. Well, those are shit, you know, clearly. I would never use it. If I'm creating an invoice, what might I need in here that's pretty important?
Invoice number.
Yep.
Company name.
Yep.
Date.
Yep.
Client name, I guess.
Yep. There's another big one. The money. There's nowhere to enter how much the invoice is for, right? So like at the most basic level, a simple field where you could enter in the amount of the invoice would be something. But you could go even a little better than that, right? You could have a couple of fields where you could say how many hours it was and what the rate was. And then we can let the application calculate what the total would be. So that would take it to a slightly more sophisticated level, all right? So
because earlier you taught us about the calculator, we never used it again.
Yeah,
It's kind of like,
exactly. So we're going to bring that back, right? That is our goal here. So there's a lot of stuff that I feel like should probably be in here. Now, on the other side over here, this is where we're going to be rendering our actual invoice. So if you were to go back to your original invoice design, you would have to figure out like what fields will I need in here to actually make that design come to life here. You also might find like, oh, maybe I revised that original design a little bit because it's just going to be really difficult to fill out this part if I don't. So you may actually improve your design with simplification. So I think that we should really, this is, if you got a slightly, critical comment in your feedback, this is the thinking process that's being applied here. It's like, yeah, make a thing. I only have time in the 2.5 hours to show you how to do something. I can't tell you what to do with what we learn. But we definitely want to see it. The other thing that is kind of cool here is we've got this little checkbox down here that I can check off to indicate that the thing is overdue. And I was mentioning in the previous class, like, we can actually use that to change the look over here. So I'll show you how to do that today as well. So our first goal is just like, let's get this a little better. And then we'll get into that high order component stuff and applying validation. If we need to, we'll use tomorrow's class as well. And I'll get rid of the, for lab 9, I have something called function as child. It's another pattern that gets used in React. But it's not anywhere near as popular as this high order component. So if need be, we'll sacrifice the function as child. And we'll use tomorrow's lab for this validation stuff and high order component as well. Sounds like a plan? That will give us time to work our way through improving this a little bit. So I think probably the first thing that I want to do with this is like make these labels dynamic. Now some of you guys already figured out how to do that. If that's you, then cool. But I can show my approach for this. Now because I know that this is a one of those stateless functions, I'm going to need to use props to make that dynamic. So we'll basically be adding one additional prop that can be used for filling in what the label should be showing here. So let me dive into this code here. This is the Lab 8 Professor Mode session that I have up here. And let's dig into it just a little bit. So let me just search out where it says like some label here, because that's clearly like a hard-coded value. Some label here. There it is. So right now it's like clearly not dynamic at all. If we want it to be dynamic, I'm in the input component here. If we want this to be dynamic, then we're going to have to like get rid of that hard-coded stuff. And because this is, the simple stateless function, well, it really only has one thing to work with. It doesn't have a state. It only has props. So I could swap this for some kind of name that makes sense. So I'll call it like props.label. Now you can see like I've now lost my, my label there because currently there is no label prop, right? We have to give it to it. This gives it the capability of making the label dynamic, but now we have to actually use that capability. So to do it, let's look for where we are using the input. You can probably guess we're going to do the same thing for the text area here, but let's just get one of these working first. So here's my controlled form, going down here, and here we go. So here's where I'm using that input, right? So to get this to show me my label, now I'm going to need to say label equals and whatever I want to call it. So I've just finished saying like and I think Mike mentioned it also, we need a client name, right? The company that we're billing here. So maybe I make this, client name. And there it is. See how it's showing up down there? So that's pretty straightforward, right? We basically render a prop, and now we give that prop a value when we use the component. That make sense? Let's do another one. We've got this text area down here. It says enter description, but I think we could be more specific. This should probably be like the project description. Or maybe it's notes. Or you could also use it for like any payment terms, right? Like where you put your payment due within 30 days. Or we break your knees. I don't know, whatever. Like your terms and conditions. It could be used for that as well. So let's fix up this text area here. So let's do it in reverse this time, right? This time I'm going to go to the text area and I'll give it the prop first. So I'll say label equals project description. Just like that. Okay? So now like we're giving it the prop. Now we have to use that prop. So let's go to the text area component. And right here where it's hard-coded to enter description, we can get rid of that and swap it for props.label. Now why am I saying label? I'm saying that because that is the name of the prop we just gave it, label. So those have to match, right? And let's see if it worked. Yeah, project description. It's pretty good. The other thing I should fix up while I'm in here, and I saw this in lots of people's work, this name that we're using here, a couple of things to keep in mind. The name should be unique, right? So we don't want to use the same name on multiple components here. And the reason why is because this name is actually used to store the information in Firebase. When you hit your submit and you look in Firebase, you'll see that whatever you called it here is the key inside of Firebase, right? So if my label and what I'm prompting people for is the client name, well, it probably shouldn't be called headline, should it? You know? So our name should be unique, and it should be reflective of the information we're asking for. Does that make sense? So let me revise that. I don't want to say headline, because it isn't a headline. Now it is a client name. Just like that. And what about this other one here? Well, description it's okay, but I think I could be more specific. So let me change this to project description. Just like that. That's looking pretty good. So we've got the start of something here, right? And the overview, I think it's okay. I'm pretty good with how that is. Let's see here. So what else did we say we needed? An invoice number, right? Now, here's why you always want to have an invoice number, guys. Because on the other side of things, the recipient for this, they probably want to record that, right? So that later on, if there's any kind of dispute about whether it's paid or it's paid on time or whatnot, then you know exactly the invoice you're talking about. You don't find yourself accidentally talking about another one. I'll give you an example. We did work for a company a while ago, had a junior developer just building like some banner ads for them. Well, with this company, they often don't really know what the banner is going to look like or be before they have to hire somebody to do it. So we do like a flat rate, which means that it's always going to be the same amount. So we wind up with like dozens of invoices that are all the same amount to the same client for the same description. If you have to talk about like, oh, you didn't pay for one of these, you better have an invoice number or it's going to be impossible to have that conversation. So it's a little thing, but you always want to have that. Also, you need it in case it's a series of invoices. Let's say you are billing for 1/3 up front, and then you're going to have 2 more payments at certain points. Well, in those subsequent invoices, you want to put a reference to the first one, right? So when you say, you know, this is invoice 2 of 3, and the first invoice was number such and such, right? You want to be extremely specific. Otherwise, you might not ever get paid, is what it comes down to. Any type, it's like it's like a legal document, right? Like any tiny little flaw in it will cause delays in the payment, and that is the last thing that you want. So let's get an invoice number in there. So this should actually be pretty straightforward with the way that we've built this form. I can almost copy paste to do it. Let me grab this first input here. Copy ito. Paste the mundo. But we have to change some things, right? So this key, this should change for sure. I'm going to call it the invoice number. So what is this key? Well, the key is used by React, right? So you know how React uses this virtual DOM? And it automatically updates any part of the screen that it needs to based on the state changing or the props changing. We're familiar with that. It's awesome. So using a key like this optimizes that process. Because if each key is unique, React actually memorizes that part of the document by its key, and it can find it faster the next time. So I mean, you won't see a difference in a small little application like this, but if you get into, you know, building more sophisticated web applications, then putting in keys is a good practice, so you might as well get used to it. It'll make your stuff look more professional, too. When a developer looks at it, they'll be like, this guy knows what's up. So we put that in, and then what else should I change here, guys? You tell me. In this line here, I want to switch it so that it's accepting an invoice number. What should be changing in here? Definitely the label. Let's update that. So we're going to be asking for an invoice number. All right, anything else? Yeah, definitely. Because this name is going to be used to store it in Firebase, right? So we don't want to have like two client names in there. So let's make this one something like invoice number. And believe it or not, this is already functional at this point. This is the beauty of how we built it. Take a quick look at your onChange up there. Now, it's deceptive in its simplicity here. Right here, we basically set, we take the target name, and we take the value, which is the result, and we just push that into Firebase, right? Like that's all we really need to do inside of here. And so keep that in mind, and then just take a quick look back here again. What we're saying is, take whatever that name is for the input that has just changed, and then get its value, and then that's what we want to remember and store. So the benefit of this is like we can have a single onChange function that gets all the changes for anything in our form here. That's beautiful. It means like we're very free to add new fields in here, and they'll just work, and they'll go into Firebase. So with that freedom, what else will we want in here? So we've got an invoice number, we've got a client name. Can I make a suggestion? We should put a contact name in there. Because like the client name, that's going to be like the company, right? Acme Corporation or something. But when you send off an invoice, if you just have the company name in there, it's way too easy for people to say, oh, this must be for somebody else's department. And it'll just go into limbo, floating around all over the place. And you will wind up doing a lot of chasing to get someone to be responsible for that invoice. So what you want is a person, right? So you're going to say, attention of TJ. You know, now when you see that, you're like, oh shit, I better do something with this, right? You're responsible for it. So let's put one of those in there. And it should be pretty straightforward. Again, like, let's do the copy paste thing again, and then just update it. So let's stick one of these in here. Now, we've already said client name, so I'm going to change this to contact name. And right here, I'll make this contact name, just like that. And then the label, we'll update that one. All right. Pretty good, pretty good. Let's test it just to make sure that this is all still working all right for us. Check out some console log action. So 001, client name Acme Corp. My contact is Powdered Toast Man. And the project, we were creating a time machine. And this is overdue. Boom. Okay, so check it out. In our little object over here in the console, what do we got? Client name, contact name, invoice number, overdue, and project description. Now that's starting to sound like an invoice, isn't it?
Sorry, spinning to death.
Oh gosh.
Should I try using it in Firefox instead?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, somebody's garbage.
Oh, is that Safari?
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm surprised it even started. These days I love to bash on Safari. It's become like the new Internet Explorer.
Yeah, it's new shit.
They really need to do some work on it. But you know, the thing is, like, Apple don't care about the web, really.
No, it's all about
Like, they don't, like, can you think of any web services sold by Apple? I don't know of any. There's storage. There's like iCloud storage, but
Apple. Shit, by the way. I have it.
no, they're all about the App Store, right?
You can
So-
put things in, but you can't take anything out of the cloud. You can't share a link to somebody like you can with OneDrive.
Really?
Or, yeah.
You can't do it. Oh
If I
man,
want to like just link some
That's
pictures and
rough.
say, look at this, you can't do it.
oh geez, I haven't used it. I haven't tried it.
To the point where they gave me 1 whole terabyte free, and I'm like, I don't want it.
I mean, it's easy to give you a free terabyte if you can't use it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take a laptop.
That is true. Their hardware is nice. I guess that's why, right? They're about the hardware. They're not really about the web.
I'll actually, and I'm an Apple person, I'll bash on that stuff though. Hardware.
Yeah, it's quite good. I do kind of wish I had one. Okay. So you guys know what's the big one that's missing right now, right? I mean, this is getting there, but the crucial information is how much this invoice is for. We don't have that yet. So there's 2 ways we could go. The very simple way would be just what we've done here. I could copy and paste one of these, give it a new label that says, you know, enter amount. And that would be simple and it would do the job. But we might run into some problems down the road from that method. Things like calculating tax, for instance, right? Now we'd have to like sit there with our calculator and calculate the tax ourselves. That's prone to errors. That could be problems. The other thing too is like maybe we have different rates depending on what we're doing. So for instance, for design work, we'll charge a different amount than we do from, you know, building a banner ad or doing code or something like that. So what I would suggest is that the better way to do it would be to add in a couple of fields here. One could be for the hours and another could be for the rate that we are using. Then we can let it calculate it. And if we wanted to add on tax or something like that, we could have another checkbox to say like add HST or something. Now we don't have to worry about it. It's going to be a lot more friendly form. So I'm thinking I want to put 2 more fields in here. And I'll probably put them right underneath of the contact name. Now here's the thing. I want these fields to sit side by side here rather than on top of each other. So here's what I'm going to suggest. right after this input here for the contact name, let's stick a row in here, right? Because a row will put whatever is inside of it side by side. So inside of the row here, we'll stick like 2 inputs. One will be for the hours we worked, and the second one will be for the rate we're charging for those hours. So let's do it. Grab one of these inputs here. This should just work. So boop. We'll paste it in here twice, and then we'll edit it. Okay. So the first one, we said that we want it to be the hours. And don't forget, we need to change the name so it gets stored properly in Firebase. And then over here, what are we asking for? The hours worked. Let's take a little look and see how that's coming along. Oh yeah, that's working, right? So here's our hours. And then let's edit the second one. And this one's going to be the rate. The rate here. And for my label, I'll say like hourly rate. Just so the person isn't thinking like, oh, this is the rate for the entire job. This is our hourly rate. Here, let me close up this console here so you can see a little better. Okay. This is getting a little more pro. I'm liking this. So these should be working already. Let's give it a try. So I'll plug in some information in here. Invoice number 002 to Acme Corp. Now, just here's the thing, guys. While you're doing your testing, let me back this up just a little bit, because this is something that increasingly is becoming very important to keep in mind is the accessibility in your forms. You should be able to tab and shift tab through this form, and it should follow the order that you're expecting here. So let me try it, because like without that, you're definitely going to run into accessibility issues. So I was talking with Allison, the technical director at Razorfish Sapient, and she was telling me directly, like, if someone's good with accessibility, she wants to hire them. Because schools are really not teaching people accessibility, but Canadian law is kicking in now that all this stuff needs to be perfectly accessible, because like otherwise you're going to be open to class action lawsuits. So one of their clients is Walmart, for example. Can you imagine if Walmart gets hit with a class action suit for their e-commerce not being accessible? We're talking mucho bucks. And that is a mistake that can happen just from some developer making a little mistake with the ordering of the tabbing in a form, right? She showed me some examples, for instance. There was a case where the designer had removed the decimal point from the price of something because it didn't look as nice. And the thing is, let's say it's $99.99 is the price. They had large numbers for the dollars and then small numbers for the cents, right? And so they removed the decimal point because it doesn't look as nice. And anyone looking at it like knows it's $99.99, right? But a screen reader reads that out as like $9,999 because there's no decimal point. Big problem, right? So I'm just mentioning it because like if you, let's say you go into an interview somewhere and the interviewer doesn't really, let's say you're showing this thing you've made in the interview. You're like, yeah, I made this invoice creator here. You should bring it up that this is very accessible. And you should tell them, yeah, tab through it. See if you can do it with, just using keyboard. When you do that, I guarantee you nobody else who's being interviewed would have brought that up. And that's going to make you like so much more professional seeming than all the other candidates in there, right? Like, no one thinks of it. If you think of it, you're automatically going to be a much more desirable developer for them. It's a good tip, right? This is coming directly from the technical director there. So keep it in mind. Let's try it. So I'm here. I'm putting in my invoice number, and when I hit tab, it takes me to the client name, which is great. So the other thing that's important about our label that we've just done here, our dynamic label, whatever is in that label is what the screen reader is going to read out. So the person who's blind, who's using this, is going to hear client name, and they know that they can now type in the client name, right? So let's do that. The other benefit is the auto-completion. If your form is accessible, the auto-completion will also be good. So we can Acme Corp, Powder Toastman. How many hours did we work for these guys? Anybody? Anybody? 20 hours sounds good. Now here's the trick, right? If I tab, I should go to the right directly. I shouldn't jump down to product description. And it works, right? So that's good. Oh man, what's our hourly, guys? What did we do for them? Oh my God, we are consultants. $250 an hour. And we built a time machine, so I feel that's a good value.
Actually, it's only people who are in class.
That's true. That is true. The rest of you guys are zero.
Zero.
And then the other thing too is like notice that with tab, it does hit the checkbox, which is good. And when I hit enter, it should fill in that checkbox. So let's try that. Hopefully that's going to work. Oh, it didn't. So like, I won't worry about it right now, but like, that is an accessibility problem, right? Because like, I could tab to the checkbox, but I couldn't fill in that checkbox without my mouse. So I might want to put something extra in here to listen for the enter key, so that when I hit the enter key, it fills that in. Be a little bit more work, but it would make it fully accessible.
I was able to fill it in with the spacebar.
The spacebar? The spacebar worked? Let me try it again. So I was here. You know what, dude? I think you're right. It's space to fill that in, and then it's enter to submit. Yeah, you're right. So yeah, we're good. Nice. So I'm super happy with this form right here. I feel like, this is head and shoulders above what I had when I started. How long have we been doing this now? It's like, it's less than an hour, right? We did all of that in about 30 minutes. So I feel like that's pretty good. Question? You can fill it out with hitting spacebar. So it actually is accessible, which is really good. I will probably show this part of the stream to Allison. That's the cool thing. Like, she might be watching it now. I don't even know. That's pretty cool.
Actually, interesting note on that. For mine specifically, I added a selector where, so you can see the box, I click it, and then there's, as you can see, my site's selling watermelon, so you can choose the color you want. And
I think up and down arrow, right?
Yeah, with the tab, no, that works, I get that, but when I tab to it, and then I can, the arrows move it.
Good.
But spacebar does not work to do that. Enter works to do that. So it does work, but it's a bit inconsistent because the checkbox here, you do it with the spacebar. This, you do it with the enter.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
It works, but it's weird.
I wonder if it's because this could also be a multi-selector, because some of them allow you to actually enter in text or do a selection from the drop-down. So I'm thinking that maybe they did it on enter. In case you were typing in the text, you would typically hit enter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because if you wanted to put a space in what you were typing.
Yeah, yeah, because this could be like a combination where you can either select from the drop-down or you can type inside.
If you're tabbed to any other field,
Yeah.
enter is to submit the form no
Yeah.
matter where you are.
Yeah.
This is the only one where it's different, so it works perfectly fine. It's just
Yeah.
weird.
It is weird, but I'm guessing that that's why.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
there's a reason for it.
there's an option that you could actually be typing in the field. And when you, yeah, but no, you're right. Because like even up here, if you typing and then you hit enter.
It submits.
Yeah, it submits. Doesn't
No
take
matter
you to
where
the
you
next.
are, enter is always submit except in that one specific field.
That's a good point. Yeah. Also, good on you for putting like an options box in there. Yeah. Nice. Is it showing up in your info? Nice, nice, awesome. Yeah, a few other little things, some nice things I saw from different people's work. Some people figured out how to, for instance, on the invoice number, there's a number selector that you can use, right? These are like newer HTML5 types of inputs. There's a date picker one as well. So I haven't gotten into those things, but if you take a look through your fellow classmates' work, you'll find a couple of cases of people using those, which is a nice touch. But I feel like this is pretty good, and I could probably turn my attention to the other side over here, the invoice previewer. So I think probably what I want to do is just make something really, really basic. I'm going to make like a simple little debugging component that just shows me completely unstyled the information, right? If that shows up over here, then I can work on making a properly styled version of the invoice here. So we can start with just the most basic form of this. So let's make a new component for ourselves. And we could call it the Invoice Previewer. Yeah. Now, we could do this as a stateless function, but what I'm going to suggest is like, let's make it a smart component, because eventually it's going to need to get this information from Firebase, right? So let's make it as a smart component here. So maybe I'll go up just above my controlled form here. Put a little room for myself. And say invoice preview component right here. And we'll say class invoice preview extends React component. So we've done this a bunch of times now. No big surprises. We're making a smart component. Typically, the first thing you'll do in that component is make your constructor, just like this. And maybe it's going to get some props. And then right away, we get the little warning exclamation mark. And that's because we need to put in that call to the super. That call to the super is what triggers the React component that we're extending and just tells it, I'm here. I say it's like the baby crying, you know. When the baby's born, first thing it wants to let you know. And then it never stops. Seems extreme. No, send him to boarding school. Baby boarding school? Oh my God, that's $1 million idea right there. Get out of here, evil replacement robot Tim. So we got a call to the super. The other thing I would suggest is let's set the state just to be empty. That's our beginning point. Okay. So we also are going to need to talk to the database, right? Talk to Firebase database. And usually, the part of the component lifecycle where we do that is going to be the component will mount. All right? So this is the one that gets executed just before it renders. So it's like after the constructor, but before it's put something on the screen. So this is a good place to talk to a database. Once you get that little chunk in there, we will pause from this component, and we're going to go look at our Firebase API stuff, because we'll make a little small update inside of there. Everybody's got this little chunk in here? Cool. Oh, the only thing we've added is just this.
No, exclusively. Oh, this state. Super props.
Like you weren't paying attention right here. That's unacceptable.
Now, when you have that little chunk in there, we're just going to step away from this component for a minute and take a look at our Firebase stuff. So for me, it's up near the top here. We have our Firebase API methods. Inside of here, we have two things that it can do. The first is where we talk to Firebase. Now we're using this to send the information to Firebase. No big surprise there. We've also got a second one here that can ask for information from Firebase with the load data. So make sure, first of all, that you have this method in here, because we can start making better use of it now. Our little invoice previewer that we're going to create here is actually going to get the information from Firebase. So what we see here will be what's actually in the database, which is good. So make sure that you've got load data, and we're going to make one small little update to it. In here, we're going to create a callback. So I've used this phrase callback before. It's probably one of the most common things that you do in JavaScript. Anytime you need to trigger a function and you don't know how long it's going to take, like talking to a database, you can give that function what we call a callback, which is really just a reference to a function that should get called when this is complete. All right? So right here, we're giving this function the ability to say, when you're done, let me know. All right? So let's see how we would use that callback. Right in here, see where I've got a console log? I can actually just change this to callback. Now that's a small change, but it makes this so much more useful because it means that anybody out there now can say, hey, load the data and call me back when you get it. We can use this in our little invoice previewer now. So we'll go back to that component and we'll call the load data and we'll say, hey, when you're finished, call this function and give me the value of the data here. Does that make sense? It should work. So let's go back to that invoice previewer. There's all my styles. Maybe I'll collapse these guys because not really changing anything about those guys. Just make it a little easier to look at. So here's my invoice previewer. And inside of the component will mount, this would be a good place to use our new load data. All right. So inside of here, let's first off create our little helper Firebase API. So we'll say API equals new Firebase API methods. All right. So this just creates an instance of our little helper class. And then we can say API load data. But inside of here now, it is now expecting to get a callback, right? So let's make one. We'll make a really simple one here. We'll make a function called, let's call it invoice update. And this gets the new data. Just like this. And for now, we can just do a console log of that. I'm going so slow right now. Seriously, I'm at like, you know, on Star Trek, they've got impulse drive, and that's like way below warp drive. I'm on impulse.
You and Usain Bolt are the only ones that can move this fast.
All right. I'll relax. Yes, just a parameter. You are right. Yeah. So what's going to happen? We're going to put our invoice update function in here. So this is us saying, hey, API, load the data, and when you're done, give it to my invoice update function. Yeah, that's how that's going to work. Let me just finish it so that we're not leaving it hanging here.
You got to break it down afterwards.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. So inside of here, I'm going to say this dot invoice update. And then the only tricky part of it is we need to do that bind thing. Just like that. Yeah. I'm going to return to this component in 1 second, but I see in my console that I've got this little error showing up here. And it's because now that the load data expects to get a callback function, anytime I use it, I have to give it a callback. And there's somewhere else in my application here where I'm calling load data, like right here, and not giving it a callback. That's in my controlled form. So for now, I'll just comment this out. Yeah, right in the component will mount. So you may or may not have that in there. We were not really using it, so I'll just comment it out. In the controlled form, in my component will mount, I had just done like a little demo of loading data from Firebase, but we're not really using it, so I can just comment it out.
Where did you put API load data, this invoice of the
That is in the Invoice Preview. So this is everything we've done in the Invoice Preview. Yeah. When we get that far, we're in pretty good shape. So let me test it one time here, just with a quick reload. Oh, so the reason I'm not seeing anything in my console is even though I've created this Invoice Preview component, I haven't actually used it anywhere, right? So we've made it, but it's not actually being used anywhere. So let me just drop it into my page here. It's called Invoice Preview. And then we'll pause for a second. We'll do a bit of debugs. Life will be good. So right here on my right-hand column, this is where I want to have the invoice preview. It's complaining that it doesn't have a render function. So let me stick in just a simple little render. You see, it's got a constructor, it's got a component will mount, but smart components must always have a render function. So I'll just stick in a little simple one here. Oh God. There, that looks more like a function. There we go. So I'll pause there because I can see that it is getting the data, right? This is being printed out from our callback, which is good. So let's look through this and see what we've done here. So forget everything else. Let's just look at this new component we've made on its own. So the constructor, pretty straightforward, right? We're just saying, hey, I'm here, Papa. And here, we're just saying, like, just set your memory blank, you know? You're like a beautiful component, but no brains. Empty memory. Right here, we're saying, okay, anytime my invoice data updates, I want to know about it. And for now, we're just going to put it in the console like we're seeing here. The tricky thing we've done right here is the component will mount says, okay, let me make a new instance of the Firebase API so I can talk to Firebase. Now, this guy here, he hides all the details, like connecting to Firebase opening up the database. We've already done all of that stuff, so we don't really have to redo it anymore. Instead, we can just talk to that API and call the load data function. Now, the update we've done is load data now accepts what we call a callback. So this is a function that should get called when it's completed its work. So for the API, the work is loading the data, right? Like when it's done, we don't know how long it'll take. Let's say we're on a slow network. Let's say, I don't know, Firebase is you know, having a lot of traffic or something like that. It could take a few milliseconds. So we say, load your data. When you're done, I want you to call my invoice update and give it the data. If you think of it that way, I think it's fairly straightforward what's happening here, right? This is us saying, load your data, and when you've got it, call the invoice update and give it that data. Yeah. No, this is part of our Firebase API methods. Yeah. So if this is fairly clear, what's happening here, let's look at the change we made in the Firebase API methods. That's our class that talks to Firebase. So if we head up here to Firebase API methods, here it is. So not too big. It's only about a dozen lines. And the only change we made was in the load data. So right here, load data now accepts a callback as a parameter here. So you see at the end here, whatever function we give it, it's just going to call it, and it'll give it the information that it got from Firebase. So this is how we set this up, where the one who's calling Firebase can say, hey, whenever you get that information back, give it to this function. Yeah. And we do have it working because we have this. So what have we done so far? Well, first thing we did was just making our form better. We gave it fields that actually made sense. Invoice number, a rate, an hourly, all this kind of stuff. No big changes there, but it is a lot more useful. Now we're looking at the right-hand column and how we can actually start to design our invoice and have it showing up in there. So this is pretty good because it means like we're very, very close to connecting these two sides together. And in the middle is Firebase. So on the left-hand side, we're sending it into Firebase. On the right-hand side, we're getting it out, and we'll show it on the screen. All right, let me check the chat here. Any debugs? Ah, yes, Nari. The callback is not a function. I had the same thing. Yep, and I know exactly why that is. So let me show you. Oh, maybe Nari found it already. Okay, so we'll do a couple of debugs here. Looks to me like maybe Nari found it already. Let's check. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the Firebase API methods. And let's see, we should have an update in the load data. Hey Nari, I'm wondering, is this the correct pen? If you are on the stream, Nari, can you resend the pen? Because I think this might be an old link that I'm looking at here. So I'll give you a second. In the meantime, let's take a look at Pietra. All right. Ooh, okay, let's see. Ah, looking in the console, I see AP is not defined, which makes me think that you might have just a simple typo, because I think you probably want API rather than AP. Let's take a look. So here's our Firebase methods. Great, you've got the callback in there. That's good. This all looks fine to me. So I think the problem is probably in your invoice previewer here. Let's take a look at what we got. Oh, TJ's got it. Nice. Here's our invoice. Okay, so we're looking in the invoice preview. Constructor looks good. Invoice update looks good. Oh, right there. There it is. Line 140, Piecha. You've got app.loadData, but you want API load data, which matches this one up here. And then you're good. Nice, nice, nice. So I won't fork it because it's really just that line 140. And once you stick in the letter I, you should be back in business. Good. So let's take a look at Nari's. You're welcome, Pietra. Let's take a look at Nari. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what it is, Nari. Let me open up my console. Yeah, so I was getting this same error where callback is not a function. And here's why. If we look inside of our load data, you can see that it's now expecting a callback parameter. There's one place where we were previously calling load data and not giving it a callback. So there's two ways we can fix it. I'll show you where it is. If we go to our controlled form, there's our invoice preview. Let's look for the controlled form. Right here, line 220 and 221. So there's two ways that we can fix this. We're not technically using this load data in our form, so we could just comment it out like this. You know, that would fix the problem. Or the other thing we can do is actually give it a callback. So right up here, maybe we make a function called invoice change or something like that, and it gets the new data. Just like this, right? So then we can actually give it that as a callback. We can say this dot invoice change bind to this. And that gets rid of your error. So if we do it this way, if we fix the problem this way, Nari, then what it means is that our form will also now know about it when the data inside Firebase changes. So what I mean is, like, both my form and my previewer here both have callbacks that get called whenever the data changes in Firebase, which could be useful, right? Like, maybe we do want to have that data over here in the form. So either one of those solutions will work. Why don't I give you a fork, and you could look at how this one is being done. But that should get you up to speed. There you go. Hopefully that made sense what I was saying there. If you want to do it the really simple way, you can just comment those things out. But I thought it's worth looking at this other way as well. Oh, you're welcome. Let's see. Okay. So how are you guys doing? Have you got the information showing up in your console over here? Nice, nice.
Wait, why is it going in your thing? No, I cheated.
It was funny, while I was working yesterday on a demo, I could see like people's projects still hooked up to my app in Firebase. They must have been screwed up so badly because I kept changing the values. Oh man. They must have been just going bananas. Yeah. I get very few thrills in this job, okay?
Oh no.
Then how come everything showing up in the object? Because I have everything separate. Not in an object.
That's probably okay. Let me take a quick eyeball of that.
I'm not gonna lose it. Copy.
Yeah, how it is showing up like this.
That's interesting.
It's submitting to Firebase,
Uh-huh.
but it's showing just like this.
Okay, I think you're all right. If you hit a problem with this next step, then let's debug it. But it looks like you're okay. Our next step is just to get that information showing up in here.
Oh no, Tim.
Oh my. Control command, Z command.
Why is it low? Oh, okay. Save.
Did you copy from somewhere, Mike, perhaps?
I know I did. It logged me out, so I had to.
That was some passive aggression right there, TJ.
It logged me out.
My hands looked at it. He did copy. I was like, that's fine. He was like, lawyer.
It logged me out too.
That's what they all say. That's what Mike used to be on the same board. Like you're still
You might want to delete my examples. I'm putting Donald Trump in your phone. You might track it.
Mike, why don't you just link to your Firebase? Do you not know how to do it?
I just did TJ, okay?
Do you not know how to do it?
You know what? You did?
Once you're in a good spot there, we're going to do a little more work on this invoice preview. So let me bring that up. Right now,
Peer evaluation is 50%.
so right now, I can see any updates because I can see it in my console. So we'll want to change this so that rather than just putting it in the console, we wanted to put it in its memory. And to do this, we use a set state. So I'm going to change this little console log here. And instead, I'll say this dot set state. And I can just put the entire data object in there because I wanted to remember everything that came from Firebase.
You can use it for testing things, but you should
So you're wondering about this right here, what this does? So the set state puts it in the memory of the component. So this is what separates our dumb component and our smart component. This smart one has a memory. So when we say set state, we're saying, hey, whatever information you got from Firebase, I want you to remember it. And because it's remembering it, we can now use it down here in our renderer. So in here, we can say this dot state, and then whatever we want to get from Firebase. So in a second, we'll update this renderer here, and we'll start to see the information showing up. That's why we do it. We have to put it in memory before we can use it.
Carol's asking you to check the chat.
Oh. Do, 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 do. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to look at this. We're going to look at, okay, let's take a look at Carol's first. There we go. I'm thinking, let's check the console, see if we have any error. Cannot read property bind of undefined. Okay, so there's only like 2 places where we have used bind. So I think we should definitely be able to find what the problem is. Let's go to the invoice preview. Invoice preview. Where are you, invoice preview? Scrolling downwards. Here we go. So it's saying it has a problem with bind. And here's bind. So we've got this dot invoice update. Do we have any typo in invoice update there? Let me copy this. It seems okay. So there is, I think, maybe one more place where we're using bind. Let's do a search for bind, because we'll definitely find it. Oh, there it is. There it is, Carl. Right here, invoice change, but up here is like invoice change. So let's fix that one. Right, boom. I think that should do it. Yes! Look at all that beautiful data showing up. Gorgeous. All good there? I'll keep that open for a second, but I think it's just your line 228 has a typo. So let's take a look at our next person here. Let's take a look at Pietra, and then we'll take a look at Nida's. Okay, this looks pretty good. Let's see. What's this object look like? It looks like this is working. I'm guessing maybe Pietra found whatever the problem was. But let's do a little test just to be sure. So let's go to the invoice preview. Invoice preview right here. Let's put an extra console log in here just to be sure this is working.
Pietra's is crashing.
Oh, really? Because it's working from here. I'm wondering if maybe your internet connection where you are, Pietra, is having a problem.
Your internet connection is shit.
Because otherwise, this does look okay. I'm testing it, and it's working all right.
She said no. Oh, I was trying to add a burger. Oh, she's trying to add the burger, and it's crashing.
Oh, give it a save, Pietra, because it's not crashing for me. I might have an old version. So I'll come back to that in a second. Let's take a look at Nida. Okay, let's check console. Nothing in the console. Okay. If I'm gonna guess, I would say that probably you have a controlled component that has a set width rather than a percentage width. And the set width is not wide enough, so it's like squashing them together. Let's take a look. That would definitely do it. Let me do a search for width.
Oh, that's it. That was it. Okay, yeah.
That's it, right? Ah, yes. Tim's on fire.
Yeah, that's one thing is fixed.
Which line was that, guys?
That was line 55.
Okay, let me fix that too, and then let's take a look at the previewer and see what's up. 55. Oh, yes, there we go.
Yeah, it's 100%.
So I'll just make this guy 100%. There we go. That should give him good room. Yep. So what you would do, Nida, probably, like, if you don't want it being that wide, then what you might do instead of restricting the width, you might go to the element that your fields are inside of and give it padding, because then the padding will move inwards and will automatically restrict the width of your fields here. So, but I won't worry about that right now. Let's see. No, please help me out.
She didn't call the element inside the view preview, the invoice preview inside the UI.
Oh.
And now
I see what you're saying. So we have to actually put it into the UI, right? Let's see. Oh yes, down here, right under this H3. Let's put in our brand new component. Just like that. And okay, getting there. But I'm wondering that I'm not seeing any data in the console. So let's take a look at the invoice preview. Okay, let's see here. So right here, we make our Firebase API methods. That looks good. We do tell it to load the data. And when it's done, it should call the invoice update, which is here. Oh, yes, I think you're totally good. Let me just be sure with a quick little console log here, but this looks good. And yes, so that is working. Currently, it has just the invoice number, but that's fine because in a second, we'll be able to use your form on the left to fill it in, and then it should show up on the right. So it looks like this is in good shape.
Only those two things, right? The element and the width of the thing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I don't think I did anything. Pretty much, you guys figured it out. So, okay, good. Pietra, I'm going to assume it's going okay because I think it might be just your connection. All right, so let me do one more thing here because we're in a good place now that I can actually get the stuff showing up on the screen. I want it appearing right here. So I'm going to do it as like a really, really basic version. There's an HTML element called a pre-tag. And a pre-tag is really useful if you want to like show some code or some JSON or something like that inside of your design because it doesn't alter it at all, right? It leaves it the exact same as it is. It doesn't try and do any formatting on it. So we could use a pre-tag to show the information, and then we should see like every property in the information. So let's give it a try. Let's go to the invoice preview. Let's return to our render here. And we had our little placeholder div here. So I'm going to get rid of this. And in here, I will put I'm going to put a pre-tag. Pre, just like this. Let's not forget to close it. And then this is why when we get the information, this is why we call set state, right? When we call set state, it puts it in memory, which means that down here in my pre-tag, I can now get it back out of memory. So try this out. I'm going to format it. I'm going to say, format that as JSON. Yeah. So you guys know what JSON is, right? There we go. So these are just the other little options for rendering JSON.
That's the thing I don't understand, the null and the two.
Yeah, you're testing my memory. It has to do with the formatting options. The null, I can't remember, but the two, I think, is what allows it to do pretty print, as they call it, which is basically putting a line break after the commas here. Otherwise, it would be like one super long JSON string. And I think, that's the danger of live streaming. Someone now is probably like, no, that's not what it is. What was that? Well, what I would say is like, maybe somebody is still pointed at my Firebase because they just filled in this Trump stuff here. So.
Oh yeah, that's mine.
Don't get me in trouble here, Mike. So the only change we've added is this little pre-tag in the render.
They were connected to so they did it on their own and
Yeah, because there's no security turned on, so anybody can put whatever into my database.
you have to have things at the top.
Now where we're headed with this stuff, just so you guys know, we will be putting like a login on this, right? So at that point, you can turn on the security, and only people logged in are allowed to write an invoice. But currently, it's still wide open. Okay, I feel like I can test this. Don't worry, I'm not writing more code. I'm just going to test my form. And if I see these values over here change, then I know I'm in good shape. So let's try 002 and my client name. Let's see, who do I want to be doing work for? Let's see. You know, I like that company Wattpad here in Toronto. They're pretty cool. So let's say I worked for them, and my contact there is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Oh, always.
I don't know if I spelled it right, but and let's say I worked for 1 hour before he fired me, and but I was working for $1,000 an hour, so that's a pretty good hour. What was I doing? I was reviewing his latest novel. So this is the big test, guys. When I hit this submit, hey, see how it changed on the right? So this is working. This is getting pretty good. So like, if you're thinking ahead, right, you can probably picture now how you can like take this information and be putting it into a proper invoice design inside of here, which we've already done a lot of the work for. If we're lucky, the invoice that you designed previously, I think around lab 2 or 3, you might be able to just take that component, drop it in here, and start filling these fields into it. I can do a simple little example of that. But if you have this working and you're able to submit, you're in much better shape. So let me have a little fun with this thing. So this little area up here, this little JSON, I find this so handy, right? I could probably use this in lots of different places just to see what I'm getting from Firebase. So what I'll do is I'm going to turn this into a component. I'll just call it debugger. And then anytime I want to see the information, I can just drop my debugging component in. Should be fairly straightforward to do. Oh, not showing? Okay, okay, so let's check that first. You want to send it to me, TJ? And then we'll look at Emily's as well. Actually, Emily beat you to it, so let's take a look. So we're taking a look at Emily's. Oh, we have some null action showing up here. Okay, let's see if we can figure that out. So the first thing I'm checking, and maybe you can check this for me, Emily, if you're checking this out. Go into your Firebase and just see if you have an invoice in there, right? Because if there's nothing in there, then it might show up as null here. That's one thing to check. And then let me go to your Invoice Preview, or whatever you've called it. And that's probably a good place to start looking. Let's see. Here we go. So here's our Invoice Preview. So the first thing I'm checking is that we've got a callback function. And it looks pretty good, but I'll copy paste just to be sure. That looks fine. Let's see if I'm getting a console log. Isn't that interesting? I am getting something. Let me put a second console log here just to be sure. Yeah, so that is working. So I think the problem is not in getting the data. The problem is how we're rendering it. So let's take a look in the renderer. So here's our div. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see the problem. I see the problem. You are missing one line in here, Emily. So, and here's why we need it. Right down here, you're looking in the state, which is the memory of the component. But up here, we haven't actually put it in memory. So you're going to need a this dot set state, and then we'll put the data in there, just like that. So round about line 265, and there you go. All right. So if you guys can take a quick look at what's happening here. So now, like, we've got the data. Down here, these are basically just stateless functions, right? So what we would do is we'd start taking the data by calling this.state.client name, for instance. And we can actually fill this in on these fields down here. So like now that we're getting it, we can start using it to make this an actual working dynamic invoice here. Let me see if I can do it for one of them. Right up here where it says invoice for name, I'm going to see if I can make it be like invoice for Apple. Let's give it a try. I'm not too sure because I haven't seen how this is put together, but oh, we can totally do it. So right here where it says name, I'm going to remove that, and I'll turn it into an expression with the curly braces. And then in here, I can say this dot state dot client name. And now we get an error, damn it. Hold on. Did I spell it wrong? Client name. What? I was sure that was going to work. Hold on. Client name. Oh, did I get the spelling wrong? There's something I'm missing here. Might be something in the invoice box, possibly. I'm thinking that's what it is. I probably have to give that to invoice box. Well, I'll have to take another look at that. But basically, that should get your data showing up there, Emily. I'm going to take a look at another debug here. If you have problems taking that data and getting it showing up in your design, we can definitely help you out with that. I'm thinking it's probably just something I don't know about InvoiceBox here, and I probably need to take a little closer look at it. But that should get you working. So the only change we made was the call to set state on line 265. So let's take a look. Oh, okay, we'll get that fixed, Caroline. But let's take a look at TJ's here, who has gone from let me help you guys out to oh my god, it's not working. I'm sure it's something small. Let's take a look.
Big problem. She said,
Is this saved, TJ? Did you save it? Because I'm not seeing anything in the console here. Give it a quick save and I'll refresh. Okay.
Like I think you have to put the input like stuff there into like in this.
Okay.
I don't know the names yet, but that's what it is.
Let's give it a try. I am seeing one thing strange right now, TJ. When I entered in an invoice number here, it looks like it's thinking that's the client name. You know? So you might need to look at your name attributes in that one. Yeah.
I'm changing like right now the name them. That's what the box is.
Okay.
See my.
So it looks like it's submitting okay. So let's check your previewer, your invoice preview.
how many freaking invoice? What's those boxes for no labels? Invoice number blank, 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 blank. Zero. Zero. Zero.
Let's see, let's find the invoice preview. Here we go. So constructor looks good. The invoice update, we should be seeing something from the console here. You know what I think it is, TJ? I think you haven't actually put the invoice preview on the page. Let's check. Let's go to the UI, right down here, and let's see. You have some crazy stuff happening here. Let's take your form, right here, your controlled form. So we want that to be inside the first column, right? So let's move it up into this column here. This first column you got, right there. So that's back to being on the left. And then over here, let's put your preview underneath of there. So invoice preview right there. Okay, now we're getting something. Yeah, I think that's your only problem. You hadn't actually put it in the page, so it was never working. Yeah, but now once you put it in the page, see how you're getting your info? Yeah, and that is correct. That is what I entered.
But how to show this in the like
What's that?
information one more time to show this?
Yeah, right now I only put in an invoice number, and that's the only thing in Firebase probably. So right now it's only showing that. So let me try your form now, and let's see if it remembers all this stuff. So I'm going to say my invoice number is 1. The rest of the stuff I have no idea what I'm entering. But like Tim is awesome. And I worked 1 hour for $9 an hour. Swimming lessons. And submit. And that looks good. See all the data we're getting? And then if I look up here, it's still not showing. So let's get it showing up. So let's go back to the invoice preview, because it's in there, but it's just not on the screen. So let's go back to the invoice preview. Oh, okay, TJ, this is the same thing that Emily had. So right here, we're logging it, but we have to actually put it into state. So we say this dot set state with the new data, right? Because up here, we put it in memory, which means that down here in the render, we can get it back out of memory again. It's like a storage.
Can you show one more time?
Yep. Right up here, your invoice update. You need this one little line here. Yeah. So basically, any time that it changes in Firebase now, this invoice update, it's like turning on a hose, right? Anytime it updates, this is going to get called now. When it does, it's going to refresh it in the memory. And when you refresh the memory, this is the trigger that tells React, hey, if something changed, you need to update it on the screen. So it's really important to use the set state. While I'm in here, let me see if I can use some of this. Yeah, definitely, yeah. Let's see here. Excellent. Do get some labels on your fields.
Oh, yeah. I was going to change it. I was just like, I'm going to do it.
Cool. Okay, let's see here. Are we getting any data? So we are getting data, but it's just not rendering. So let's find out why. So I'm going to say it's probably in the invoice preview. Let's head over to there. Invoice preview. And then I think next up is Molly. We'll take a look at yours. But maybe you will see something from what we're doing here. Okay, here's the invoice preview. And I can see that set state is being called here. So that's okay. Let's take a look in the renderer. It is using the state, which seems good. Very curious. Let me try something. So an extra little debugging trick you can do. Let me remove this console log from here. And if you put a comma after the state information that you're setting, you can actually put a function in here that will get called after it has completed putting it in memory. And in here, if you do a console log, this dot state, this should prove, that it's going into memory. Let's see here. Let me put an extra little log here just to be sure. That's interesting. So I don't actually see the set state completing in here. Huh. Let's put an extra little console log here.
watching this Netflix.
Wow. This is weird. So it looks like this invoice update is not actually getting called. Do we have a typo? So it's invoice update. Let's make sure this is not a typo. No, that seems okay. So the other thing I'm thinking is let's check your Firebase API methods and make sure that it's got the code for using callbacks. Maybe something there. Because over here, like at the very least, I should be seeing got some data. Yeah. So let's go back to your Firebase API methods. Right here. Oh, that's what it is, dude. So right here where you've got a console log, you want to actually turn this into your callback. Yeah. Now it gets them talking to each other. Yeah, that's what it is. There you go. Let me try your form while I'm here. Submission works, and the data shows up. So we're good. All right, so let's take a look at Molly. Oh, good. Carolyn's all up and working. Good. Oh, you got it? Nice, nice. Ah, okay. Oh, look at this is looking good. Okay, so just while I'm here, like first off, this is lovely, by the way. I think it's really nice. Now, one point of feedback that I was going to mention was concerning the responsive in your navigation bar here. So,
I did as you say,
and
like get rid of the div.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's still like that.
Okay, let me try something. Let's see, just while we're here, if we can make that a little more responsive. So there's a couple ways we could handle it. One, we could just make it disappear on a small screen, like maybe it just doesn't need to be there. The other way would be to get these guys to stack. So let's try it. Okay. Okay, let's take a quick look at it. I won't spend too much time, but if we make it work quickly, then that will be good. So let's go to your controlled component, or your styled components. So let's see here. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the UI, and we'll look at what we're doing with the menu. So right here, so here's how it works. This is what I wanted to point out. Your row has the flexbox turned on and the flex direction set to row. So they go side by side, which is good, but it only works on the immediate child. So right now, because these guys are all inside one, the flexbox is really not going to work. So what we can do is remove menu text like this. Now this might make it a little bit messed up at first, but so the alignment is slightly different, but what you could do is like add styles to your anchor. You know what I mean? If you wanted to give them padding or something, you could put it right on the anchor. Now the advantage is that if I stick in this stack here, they should stack up like this on small screen, which is better, right? Rather than getting chopped off like that. Yeah. So let me give you a fork of this just so you can try some things with that. But this is really coming along nice. And then the other thing we're going to do is here, where we've got this value, we're going to use our calculator, but we'll do it based on what we have here.
Okay.
So we'll take the hours, multiply it by the rate, and fill it in up here, which is going to be like really nice. Yeah. So let me give you a quick fork on that one. Now we are really making good stuff. There we go. And that's next up. Next up, we got Winlim.
Actually, my console log has some issues, some error.
Okay, okay. Let's figure it out. I'm just going to close a couple tabs here so I don't crash. Whew, I'm the king of tabs today. Okay, let's see. Oh, this looks good. It looks like it's working, right? Oh, something in the console? Oh. I'm not getting an error in my console, but let me try your form, and let's see what happens. Now, we might have a bit of work to do on your responsive, but no worries, we'll figure it out. Client name is Oddly. Contact name, Tim. You're going to bill me 12 hours at $90 an hour for development work. There we go. And this one I'm not sure, but I'll put something in here. Stuff. And submit. So it looks like it worked. Yeah. Oh snap, look at this. So Winlim's actually already got it rendering into her styled components here, right? So it just flowed from, so this tells me like all of the name attributes over here, those name attributes match what we expect to get out of it. So that's beautiful. Yeah.
Bam, sonhão.
Mm-hmm. So if you're done with it, you can just remove this this little piece here, and then you're ahead of the game. Is your calculator working too?
Bam.
12 times 90 is 1080, is that right?
No, yeah.
Who's does math? Anybody?
9, 10,
Apparently none of us do math.
11, 99.
But we would like to make $1,000, yes.
Bam.
That's awesome. Awesome. Very good.
I have a small problem too. My checkbox is not working.
Okay, let's take a look.
It's only a small, and it's not positioning also properly. I don't know exactly.
Okay.
It is going well.
Let's take a look at Mr. Dipsauce here.
The responsiveness is a little high.
So this looks good. Now let's double check this checkbox here. So let me try entering one in here. So let me check this. Oh, I see. It's actually not allowing me to interact with it. Okay, let's see if we can figure that out. Now I am wondering if maybe something's sitting over top of it, blocking it, something like that. Let's see what we can find. First, let me check the console, because maybe we see an on change.
I think if you click on a particular position, it works, but I don't know exactly. The mouse should be exactly somewhere.
Might be a CSS problem. Could be that something is overlapping over top of it and blocking the mouse interaction. But let's check for sure. So let's go to your controlled form, and we'll go into the on change and see if we're even getting change events when we click on there. So let's see. Let's just put a little console log in here. And in here, we'll put the event target so we can see what is changing.
I figured one thing was the margin, 10 pixels. That has to do with the margin, which I needed that word.
Yeah. Oh, I have to hit run. I'm going to turn on your auto updates again, just so I can go a little faster here. Okay, so does that work? Oh, why am I not getting my? So I'm wondering why I'm not getting these console log right here, because I am changing something. Here, I'm gonna fork this so I can refresh it. Let me refresh this. Okay, let me give it a try again. Okay, so it is hearing the change there. What about here? Oh, yeah, it is hearing the change there. So then what about here? Ah, right here it doesn't hear the change. Okay.
If you go to my console overdue text, if you remove the margin, the 10 pixel margin, the box should work right now.
Ah, so there probably is something blocking it.
Yeah, it is overdue text, I think.
Let's take a look. Let's take a look at your. Let's take a look at the UI. Maybe something is not closed. That could possibly be it. Let's see. So we got this overdue text area with the checkbox inside of it, and those are both inside of a row. Okay. Might be a problem with the overdue text area. Possibly. Because checkbox, let's take a look at this component. So inside of that, we've got an overdue text. Let's take a look at that one. Right here. Oh, okay, so it's just a styled paragraph. Let me, I'm going to try something here. Because these two guys, the late invoice and the checkbox, they're both in a row. And I'm thinking we could use since they're both in a row, we could probably use the flexbox properties to get them to automatically align themselves. And then we wouldn't have to use margin or padding or anything. So let me try something here. I am kind of wondering why this guy is so far to the right. Let's take a look in the inspector. I have a feeling like it's just a positioning thing. So here's this one. That's interesting. So as I hover here, do you see what is happening? When I hover up here, it almost looks like the checkbox is inside of that, right? And when I go one down, it's not there. So like, I feel like something's not closed. I think that's what's happening. Because where is that checkbox? Here, let me. I really feel like something is not closed.
It's like it's stuck somewhere.
Yeah. So there's that. And then there's a text area. And then this. Submit. Where is it? Is it in here? Oh, okay. It is there. It looks like it's getting some margin applied to it.
Yeah, 10 pixels. That's about better overdue text. Should we remove that margin?
Yeah, let's remove that margin.
Now the margin start to work.
Okay.
But you have to still click on a particular area, but it's okay. I didn't say that.
What about, is there any position property given to that one?
Text has been given 800%.
So this is definitely just a CSS issue. I think your code's fine. Let's take a look at that. What is this input special field? Oh, and this should go too. I would get rid of both these margins. In the input special field? Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yes. So what's happening? You had a margin -10, which was pulling this checkbox upwards, but it was getting it behind the hit area of this field up here. So blocking the mouse interaction. So in your input special field, I would just get rid of both of those margin properties, and then you should be okay. Oh, I put a comment in your previous lab for that. It's your column. Your column styled component has a typo in it. I'm pretty sure. Let's see if it's in there.
I think you're right. It should be correct. Mistake.
Yeah. It's easy to do. Let's find it.
Yeah, it's good now. It was the page.
Yeah, it was set to flex direction holder. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So this one we make column, and that should take care of that. And the nice thing is the stacking is kicking in, right? Which is like perfect. So that's looking pretty good. Okay. So some of you guys might already be there in terms of like actually creating your invoice view over here.
No problem. I don't know how to fix this one. I want to move it like right, but I don't know how.
So the reason it's doing that, I think, is that these guys probably have margin applied to them, which is pushing them over. So let me jump in there with you. I think in one of the forks that I put in the feedback that I fixed this. So let's see if I remember. So this question has to do with the positioning of stuff because we're getting some overlap here, right? So I think what's happening is that these guys probably have margin that is forcing them over into the other section. So let me go looking for margin. So that one's okay, because that's 0. Could be this one. What happens if we remove it from form? Let's see. Yes, I think that's it. So if I bring it back again, you see how that's causing the overlap? If we remove that margin 10 pixels, then they're basically exactly aligned side by side now. Yeah, so let's do it. I would say maybe the better way to do it would be like with padding, because padding will always squish inwards rather than pushing outwards. So let's see what happens if we just do a padding, and maybe we do it with 1EM. Nope. Let's see. Let me take a look at how this is set up. There's a couple of ways we can do it. Let's see. So here's our page. So the page is set to column. So that's what causes things to go on top of each other. Then inside, we have a row. And the row includes this H1. And that's the menu bar. OK, that makes sense. So this goes all the way across. Then we've got another row with a column in it. Yeah, that looks good. And then a second column. So by closing them, I can just make sure that they have a closing tag, because they won't shrink if they don't. This looks, your setup looks good to me. So let's see. Let's see here. Let me look at your style for your column. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Let me check your row while I'm here. Let me try this one. Text direction. This looks good. Let's look in the inspector.
2 weeks.
So here's our column. Here's our, something funny is going on. Because like, when I hover over it here, this should really be going the full width of the page. And for some reason, something is stopping it. I wonder, is it our row? Oh, rows should be 100%. That's okay. This is okay. Okay, so yeah. So with your row, definitely make sure that you set that to 100% wide. Because what's happening is, because it's only 50%, there's actually not enough room in there to apply my padding and stuff. So now I think, in fact, you've even got, you see right here, Nita, in line 37, you actually have this little expression that allows you to apply spacing to any row. Let's give it a try. So we're going to use the space attribute. Let's go back down here. I think this should do what you want. So right in here. It is, but it's applying it to the whole row. So we're getting spacing here, and technically we're getting space on the right, but not exactly what we want. I think what we want is space in the column, right? We basically want our space in this column. So let's see if we've got something in column for adding space. We do, right here. It can also accept a space property. So let's go back and put it on the column this time. So here's our column. And we'll say space equals maybe like 3 EM. You know, I feel like you might be missing. Oh, Nita, you are missing the most important thing over here in your CSS. Yeah, let me show you. It's the one that we use as a CSS reset right here. This little piece, the box sizing border box. That's the one that makes the padding expand inwards rather than trying to push outwards. So let's copy that one, and then I think all of our tricks are going to start working. Let's put it in here. Whoa, we have a There's some other issue in here. I think I'm gonna need a little time to dig through it, Nita. But you definitely want to have this CSS reset in here.
No, I want to get the stupid thing going in the underneath the view invoice preview.
Well, I'm going to have to move on, Nita, but we'll just have to dig into it a little bit. I mean, it's all functional, but there's something with your CSS that's not right here, because when that spacing is applied, it should be pushing those inwards and providing a little space around the outside edge. So it could be that something is not closed. There's something I'm missing here, but I think I'll need a little bit of time to find it. So I would say focus on the functionality for now. Let's get your stuff showing up underneath of the debug view here with this next little bit I'm going to do. And then we'll figure out the spacing and sizing and stuff. The good thing is, with that stuff, with those fixes that we have made, technically your responsive works now, right? See, if I'm resizing, how everything is like getting smaller the way it should. So that is much better. And as far as like layout, it's just a matter of hunting around and finding what's wrong there. So let me give you a fork of this, because even though it doesn't look like it at this moment, I think it's actually much better. And I love that the data is showing up there. That's great. You know what? I want to do one more thing. If we go to the row that you've got everything inside of here, this one right here, you can add a property, stack, and then it should actually cause them to stack. You see? On the small screen now, your previewer will go underneath, which is, it's not getting cut off. None of the boxes are getting super small. So let's keep that in there, and I'll give you this fork. Ah, you're welcome. So I can still do another debug here, but just before I do, I want to show one more small little thing here that will basically give you what you need to continue with this. So underneath of my invoice preview here, I should be able to use any of the stuff that we put into memory with the set state. So right here, let me go to my invoice previewer. And underneath of here, so you see how this works, guys? Anywhere that you want to render the thing, you just go into the state and pull out the property that you want. And since you have them all listed right here, any of these are available for you. Now, let's say you get into the design and you realize, oh, there's something missing. Like I really wanted a, I don't know, payment date or something. You can simply add it in as another field in your form by just copy and pasting one of the ones you have and changing its name and its key. And then when you submit, it should automatically show up and you'll be able to use it. So this is, you know, very flexible for you. Let me put the client name in there. Ah, yeah. He didn't tell you he's tracking the hours? That's why we're building this, Nita. When it's done, he's going to bill you. So this part is pretty much just straight up fun.
See where the bottom part says previous invoice and next invoice. It's supposed to fall underneath the view invoice.
Then you scale it down.
It's supposed to kind of, yeah, like within that thing.
Yeah, but you have to scale it first. You scale it. It's like this is a responsive thing on the desktop. That if you scale it, it's going to go to mobile. The chances of responsiveness to it. And if you scale it, goes down.
So my invoice is starting to take shape underneath of here. Oop. But let me show you one more little trick here, which has to do with using the OR inside your expression here. So let's say I get this far, and I've got the invoice number, I've got my client name, I've got my contact name, and I realize like, oh, I wanted something to show that this was urgent or something like that. Like there's some kind of field that I forgot about and I need it. Let me show you one small little trick here. Inside your expression, you can do this. So I'll put in this.state.urgent. Now right now, nothing is going to show up because in my state, there is nothing called urgent, right? There's no property called urgent. We have client name, we have contact name, but we don't have one called urgent. But if I just want to see what it would look like, I can actually give it a default value right in the expression by using the little OR comparator, like this. OR, which is like 2 pipes. And then you use your little accent grave deal. And now see how it shows up? So like, if you, it's helpful for you because like, if you want, it means you can design your whole form here and put in default values on the right, like this, and then just go back and make fields for the one you want. And then it'll automatically flow into there when it does become available in here. You see what I mean? This allows you to put a default value for anything that is not in the state yet. So my next step, if I wanted to keep this, I'd go back to my form, and maybe I'd add a checkbox, and I'd give it the name urgent. And then when I use that, well, now this will have a value, and it will show up. So a nice little trick to know about. All right, let's take a look at Mike.
I fixed it.
Oh, let's not look at Mike.
I just have to put the column in the column.
I'll go for a coffee. How are we doing on time, guys?
I'm trying to put the the actual preview falls underneath here, but
Yeah.
this was going at the bottom, so I put the column in the column and it's not.
Yes, yeah, perfect. So you're getting the whole columns and rows.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually now
good.
put the rest of the invoice in here. So
Yes, exactly. And then when it's all good, you can just like get rid of that chunk, and you'll be good to go.
You know what though? I don't mind this though. Like,
It's
for
helpful
example, this is a
having it
render.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suppose something messes up with the rendering, at least you know the information. It's a quick thing to see everything's proper.
Yes, exactly.
Style it.
Yeah. There's a couple of more advanced examples of forms in the links on Leaflet. And Adam makes use of this little thing quite a bit in those examples, so you can see how they work. But this looks pretty good, right? Well, I mean, no, it doesn't look good, but it's getting there. It has what it needs to look good. So in terms of the styling of the thing, that will be up to you guys. We will definitely be checking the responsive just to make sure that's all on point. How much time is remaining, guys?
Jiro, we can go a little bit because the other contract is canceled.
Oh, but I can't. I've got a meeting after class.
So technically we only have 5 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I feel okay with it because like this was really good what we did today. Don't you think? Like, I think we're way further ahead than we were in the last class. So tomorrow, guys, we will work on that high order component that I was talking about. We didn't get to it today, but we're going to use this pattern called a high order component to add validation to our form here. Because right now there's 0 validation. I can enter in anything I want or nothing at all, and I can still hit the submit button, which is bad. Like, some of these fields should be mandatory. So for instance, if I don't put in an invoice number and I try to submit, it shouldn't let me. It should stop me and say like, you must have an invoice number. So that is what we'll be working on for tomorrow. If you want to preview what we're going to be doing, if you want to check it out, back in Leaflet here on the Lab 8 links, right down here you've got the simple validation high order component. So this is what we will be working on. So here, let's say I try to use this form, I submit it, and it says, no, client names you must have. You must have a contact name. You must have an invoice number. You must have a description. So if I go back and I start filling these out, so let's say I do this. Now if I submit, it still catches me on the one error, right? It's still telling me like I must have an invoice number. So sure enough, I didn't fill that in. So this can basically check all of the fields, and I'll show you guys how you can like create your own custom rules for this. So for instance, this one right here, one rule is probably going to be that there must be a value in there. It can't be blank. But a second rule might be not only should it not be blank, but it should be a number, you know, so that I can't put in a string or something in there. And so we'll make this validation system. And the cool thing is you would be able to use this validator with any form. So no matter how your fields change, or if you have more than one form, you'll be able to use this one validator for all of them, which is quite nice. So if you get the chance, you might want to look through that code a little bit. It's cool that it's like actually showing what I'm entering in on my other pen, right? Because they're both using the same Firebase, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, this has pretty much got everything. So, all right, so that is it for today, guys. I gotta head off to my meeting, but this was really good.
Love that too.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'm sure it's gonna go well. For you folks on the stream, I will see you tomorrow.